And today I wanted to talk to you about a show that I saw on Netflix, though I can't watch it anymore now because I no longer have Netflix. That's my choice, so I'll deal with it. And it's a show called The Good Place, and it's in its fourth and final season, running on NBC, and it stars Kristen Bell, who is famous for providing the voice of Anna in Frozen, and also Ted Danson. You may remember him from Cheers. And I find this show hilarious, captivating, and thought-provoking. When I found it, I basically ended up watching the first season twice. I loved it so much. The first time I watched it with my wife, and then the second time we together watched it with my mom and dad who were visiting for a week. We basically binge watched it. And check it out. It's a good show, but also check it out because it also explores human nature and legalism. I mean, it is a show that is designed to speak about ethics and communicate ethics. And it does a fairly good job of that too. The whole premise is that this girl, Eleanor, dies and she ends up in the good place. Basically heaven without Jesus. But there's one problem. You see, there's been a mistake. The good things that they say that Eleanor has done, she didn't actually do. They've got the wrong memories for her on file. All the good deeds that they say that she's done weren't actually done by her. In reality, Eleanor is actually a jerk. She's selfish, she's rude, and those sorts of things end up causing problems in the good place. Causing things like flying shrimp, or a gigantic hole to oblivion, or the entire community being filled with garbage. So Eleanor ends up turning to her soulmate, named Chidi, and he ends up helping her by teaching her ethics in order to help her fit into the good place and actually try to make her become a better person. And as we go through season 1, we find out that there are so many people who are in the bad place. In fact, you get the sense that almost everybody who ever lived is in the bad place. Now, the way that it gets decided which place you're going to is through a method of counting your good works. If you rack up enough good points, you're sent to the good place. If not, you're sent to the bad place. But the criteria for what points help you, what points get you to the good place, is so restrictive. We find out that if you have any kind of selfish intent at all, then that work that you've done will never gain you any points. In fact, it'll cause you to lose points. And this system is used to prove that all people are basically bad. There's no such thing as a good work because all of our works have some kind of selfish motive behind them. All our works are to some extent self-serving, whether it's being recognized as being greater than your rival, or even just because you want to get into the good place. Almost every single work is bad and earns you a spot in the bad place, where there is nothing but torture, and sometimes very creative means of torture. Rather interesting. And I don't think they meant to have the show talk about this or display this, but this show shows us a little bit of original sin, that we don't do good work by nature, because we're always thinking of ourselves first. We're always serving ourselves first. We're always putting ourselves ahead of everyone else, and we will only do good things, often because we don't want the flying spaghetti monster to destroy us, but instead earn ourselves life in heaven. And it turns out, as we watch the show, that the only way for one of the characters to actually earn enough good points to make it to the good place is actually to sacrifice themselves and save everyone else around them. Gee, that kind of sounds familiar, doesn't it? Who does that sound like? Oh, yeah. Then there's this other matter of legalism. At one point, we find out that this system, this point system, is just far too restrictive to let people go into the good place. And so the idea is to lower the bar, set up a new way of letting people get to the good place. Because you see, that's the thing about legalism. It very easily recognizes that God's law is just too hard. Legalism recognizes that God's law is, in fact, impossible. So it tries to lower the bar. That's why the Pharisees have their 627 laws. You remember the Pharisees in the Bible that Jesus is always butting heads with? We tend to think that those 627 laws are strict, but no, that's not strict. We think that the rules about how close we should dance together or courtship laws, we think that those things are strict, but they're really not. They're not. Strict is the Ten Commandments. And all these 627 laws, they're actually trying to make the law doable. They're actually trying to make it possible to keep the law. Yeah, maybe we'll never make the highest grade, but we'll put the bar down here, just a little bit lower. Then if you try hard enough, or if you improve enough, maybe then you'll make it. But since our nature isn't good enough to begin with, then that means that our good works are never enough, and so we'll lower the bar again. But the lower we drive that bar, the further that bar drives our face into the mud, grounds us down until we are dead, so that we can't even lift our head anymore. And we become so exhausted of trying to be good enough, trying to improve enough, we'll never actually make it. Now, one last thing. How this point system, how is it different from anything else? How is the good place different from Buddhism, or Mormonism, or Islam, or Hinduism, or literally anything else other than Christianity? I mean, it's not. Because this is as far as the human mind can go. Because we think that if you're going to get into the good place, then you have to be a good, ethical, and upright person. We think that if you're going to be a friend of Jesus, you have to then be a good person. There's a word for this in the church. It's Latin, so you can learn it and then impress your friends with it. It's a phrase called opinio legis, which means opinion of the law. The idea that we have this default opinion in ourselves that if God is going to give us a command, if he's going to say something about how we get into heaven, then it has to be something that we do, that we can and have to save ourselves through the law, through racking up enough points in order to earn ourselves a spot in the good place, in heaven, in nirvana, or what else you may think of. And this is totally opposite from the way of salvation that God sets out for us. He tells us that no, you cannot earn the points for yourself. In fact, all you earn for yourself is bad points. So he sends Jesus to earn the good points for you. Jesus is good enough, and Jesus finishes it by his death on the cross. He is good in your place. And then he dies because of your evil ineptitude, you bunch of maggot-filled meatbags. You see, the reason that's funny is that the demons in the bad place are always calling each other names, and it gets pretty creative and clever. Jesus died. He takes your evil so that you may have his life, so that his good points may be charged into your account through faith in him. Alright, so that's the good place. Check it out, guys. It's pretty forkin' awesome. You see, the reason that's funny is that the good place replaces all the F words with fork, and all the S words with shirt, and so on. I love this show so much.